What happened to me in my life is statistically impossible. So someone upstairs was looking out, yet I wasn't showing that respect of saying, I trust that you love me. I trust that everything's gonna be okay. Giving that trust to the universe, I've seen amazing, miraculous things start to happen in my life. You and your wife have the most amazing eyes. So having to stare directly at you and do this podcast, I feel like I'm slowly falling in love. So there you go. So now we can do this. As I have to stare into those pools.
So this is why you don't look at me often. This is why I was like, Scooter doesn't give me eye contact.
You know, it's funny. Prince is right there because there's that famous joke of like, never look Prince in the eyes, you'll fall in love. This is what you learn at the Jay Shetty Podcast.
I love it, man. And you look different since the last time I saw you.
Yeah, shaved.
Shaved, and you look well though. You look great, man.
Thanks, man.
And I wanted to tell people because I think when people see people connecting, they don't realize sometimes how organically people meet. And I want to share that story if that's
Great.
Okay. And you can fill in the details.
Let's do it.
But it was a couple of years ago. We were at our mutual friend Justin Baldoni's movie premiere.
Yeah.
He had the movie coming out 5 feet apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the movie premiere. I was running late. I didn't think I was going to make it. I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to let Justin down. I really want to be there for him. And then I'm walking in, and then I see you walking in. And I knew who you were based on all the incredible work you've been doing for 2 decades now or more. And
I knew you.
I didn't know that.
I was a fan of what you were putting out there, and I was and the positivity. So when I saw you, I got just as excited.
So I got excited, and I was in this space where I was like, I have to go and tell him, because if someone's impacted your life or you love the artists they work with, the work that they do, today we're going to discuss all the philanthropy work you're doing. When you're into someone, I feel like it's so important to not go and ask for a picture, but to go and express how you feel about them. And so I came up to you and I was like, Scooter, I'm a big fan of all the work you're doing. Congratulations. And then when you said it back to me, and I remember the words you said, they were so powerful, and it just showed me how present you were. And I think maybe, you know, people don't know this about you because not everyone gets to bump into you, but you were like, I said, the work you're doing is really important. Thank you for doing it. And you said, you're doing the most important work. And,
well,
and
I meant it.
Yeah. And it really touched my heart. I was so, I was so humbled and honored to hear that from you.
And then we were like, well, let's get together. And I think you kind of looked at me when I said it as like, okay, yeah, we're not really going to get together.
Definitely.
And we ended up going for lunch. Our
the
our
next
wives
day.
met. Yeah, our wives met, and we became friends. And then you joined us on a trip, and it's I'm so happy to see your message getting louder and louder and bigger, because I think you're giving people a lot of the things they need to hear and a lot of positivity and allowing them to slow down and take a breath.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I've always felt that support from you, and we've had some amazing trips and
some good walks.
And some good walks as well. Some really important walks at meaningful times in my life. And you've always been so helpful, mentoring, supportive as well. And so thank you. But today, I think, the fascinating thing for me is that you have these incredible artists that you founded. You then have the man behind the people, the work, the person. But then, even far removed from that, you have the work that the man is doing behind the scenes. And so it's almost like you're twice removed. The real you, the behind the scenes version of you is almost so distant from what people experience on the front lines. That's what I want to discover today and share today, because that's what I feel I got a glimpse of.
Yeah, I think you did. And I think it's so funny that we're doing this, because we talked about doing this pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and a lot of things happened, a lot of things changed. And for me, COVID was an opportunity to slow down and do some real self-reflection and self-work, which I think we all should be doing at all times. I really came to terms with the fact that as long as I'm breathing, I'm a student. And it's funny that you start there, because obviously my nickname is Scooter, and my given name was Scott. And I can tell you, I don't remember ever liking the name Scott until now. I didn't realize until I've did the work I've done really over the last 6 months that I kind of left Scott behind in a way and built something that I thought was powerful enough to be in the world, something that I thought deserved to be loved by the world. And um, I didn't realize subconsciously how much I had left that inner child behind. And my friends didn't realize it. And I was having fun and everything else, but I was always kind of trying to build something new because of, you and I spoke about this. One of the quotes that I loved, someone said, many times we don't know our trauma because it was never ours.
Mm.
And, my grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and my parents went through what they went through. And I feel like I kind of inherited some of that, where I always felt like, when is it going to get taken away? When are they going to show up and take it away from me? So I was always building for something else, to protect me and my family, not realizing that everything that I ever needed was right here in the present. And doing this work, I went back and got Scott. And I think you saw a glimpse of that. Certain friends of mine saw a glimpse of that. And I feel like coming out of COVID, I'm putting that more on the forefront.
Yeah, I love hearing that. Yeah, I started there just because I think it's the root of today's conversation. Us sitting down here today is two friends wanting to go deep in a conversation we would have offline but online. And hearing you say that is so freeing, I'm sure, for everyone who's listening and watching, for themselves too. Because I think all of us are holding on to a trauma that's not ours, or something that we experienced. Let's focus on that. Let's go back then to, what were you like as a kid? Because I'm intrigued to know. I didn't know you then. What were you like? Like, were you always confident? Was there an insecurity? What is it that you were working through as a kid, or at least in hindsight?
Look, I out of respect for people that I love, there's certain things I'm not going to go into, only because I realize now that we all see the world through our lens.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really start to do the work, you realize that things that happen to you, a lot of times were happening to you because it's all that people knew,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's not about resenting anyone or being angry. It's actually about loving more and then changing the pattern, because you're choosing that for yourself. So what I can tell you is I was a very sensitive, loving kid, and loved everybody, loved having fun, loved shining my light out there, but was super sensitive. And I think as I grew up, I was raised for a tough world, and I was raised by very loving people, but there was a lot of trauma, like I said, the Holocaust, like, things happened. And when people go through that, they're trying to protect their next generation. They're trying to protect their loved ones. So they're giving them what you need to look out for. And I'm grateful for that in many ways, because there's great things that come with that. But also, as a child, you don't really have that rational thought until you're like 6 or 8 years old. So you're interpreting things the way you are, and you don't realize you're setting these patterns. And I'm not embarrassed to say this. One of the things I did during COVID, in fact, I'm not the opposite of embarrassed. I'm grateful to these people. I canceled 4 times on something called the Hoffman process.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally went in October, because friends were pushing me and saying, this is going to be great for you. And I was like, what do I need this for? And I finally went, and it was the greatest gift I ever gave myself. And it was the first time in 20 years that I went no phone, no email, no TV. I was completely ingrained in this process. And funny enough, which is why you and I haven't connected, when I got out, everyone was like, okay, he's going to turn his phone back on. And I actually got a burner phone and didn't turn my actual phone back on until the end of the year.
Wow.
Until 2021, really. And my team stepped up for me. I was kind of going through a couple different people and, giving the suggestions and helping. And the artists that I work with were incredibly respectful of it and appreciative, because, I'd been there for them. And I remember them looking at me like, now it's time for us to be here for you and let you go through what, you're learning and whatever. And I've really had a shift in my life. And I couldn't be more grateful, because you go through and things are going good. You're seeing other people in their trauma. You're seeing other people with whatever they're going through. And you don't want to look at yourself, because you're like, well, my life's so good. I have nothing to complain about. I don't need to do this work, because who am I to even say I need help, when people are really going through problems? I should just focus on the good things in my life.
Mm.
And what I realized is we all deserve the right to slow down and say, why am I hurting? What am I going through? What work can I do?
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that a lot of people that love me push me to do that.
That's amazing. When you told me you did that recently when we were talking, I was so happy. And the other conversation we had that was attached to that, it actually brought me so much joy because I feel like when someone in your life that you care for actually invests in themselves and now is saying no to certain opportunities or delaying events in their life or priorities in their life, like huge priorities. I mean, your artists have huge, like not huge is not astronomical careers with constant releases, with constant work. And the fact that you took that time, they're getting to see what you're prioritizing. And what I find so special about that is you had to, it's amazing to think about this, but you had to feel you were worthy of that time, that you had to feel like you deserved it and
Yeah,
that you couldn't just neglect it because, yes, you do have a blessed, fortunate life, which you're grateful for.
very.
Tell us about that feeling of feeling worthy, because I feel like that's such a,
Feeling like you're enough, to be honest with you. I think, one of the things I learned there is we have these core shame lies, that we tell ourselves that affect us and create our fear and create our transference with other people. And it's not the root of things. I mean, I got a new tattoo actually when I got out. It says love more on my chest. Because that's the number one lesson I learned. That's how you need to respond to really most things.
yeah.
And I'm working on that every single day with everything. Whenever I feel resistance, I realize, oh my God, there's a lesson for me here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the things I had to realize is that I'm good enough, because there's this weird thing that, like, you kind of go through life wondering, are you good enough? And all these things are happening for you and you're wondering, do I really deserve this? Am I good enough? The other thing I realized was none of us truly love ourselves unconditionally. And then how are we supposed to love other people unconditionally? To me, the way God loves us is unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I really had to go through, and what I'm reminding myself every day in my daily meditations now, is that one, you're good enough, two, you're lovable, two, everyone else deserves love. And then the biggest thing I'm realizing is that I need to trust, trust in the unknown, because you go out there and I got to make this happen. I'm gonna sleep when I'm dead, like all these different things. And the truth is, what happened to me in my life is statistically impossible. So someone upstairs was looking out, and they've given me a life with every single sign that God loves me and is looking out for me. Yet I wasn't showing that respect of saying, I trust that you love me. I trust that everything's going to be okay. And giving that trust to the universe, I've seen amazing, miraculous things start to happen in my life. And I can tell you, it's almost like I'm prospering better than ever before because of that. And the challenges have been getting harder and harder and continuing. But it's almost like these tools now are allowing me for the waves to hit me and I'm swimming through them. And I'm understanding with everything, there's something else to be learned.
Yeah. See, when I'm hearing you say it, you can tell that it's been so realized, because a lot of these things, we hear them in daily talk, like, oh yeah, you should learn from everything in life, and every challenge has a lesson and an opportunity. But when you hear someone say it and they're living it, it sounds different and it hits different. And the biggest thing you said, which really resonated with me just now, is the idea of the love more, the tattoo you got. I read this incredible statement from a writer called Russell Barkley. He's no longer with us, but the statement he said, like, literally, this is like, it's changed how I view every situation, and it correlates so similarly to the experience you had. So Russell Barkley said, people who need the most love often ask for it in the most unloving ways. And literally every day when I'm living my life, I see people ask me for love, sometimes in the most unloving ways. And I think we've all experienced that.
Big time.
Where someone's criticizing you, but really they just want love. Where someone's trying to get something from you or reaching out to you, but they want love. Like, everyone's ultimately seeking love, but they are seeking it through validation or attention or recognition.
And I think we learned that as a kid. I mean, I told my dad, recently, that you loved me so unconditionally that I see through the lies of fear. Because we're giving our kids, in a weird way, sometimes transactional love, because we're trying to teach them lessons. And then you go through life, and I never thought I was a transactional person because I'm not like that with money.
Yeah.
But I realized I was like that weirdly with love, and I was like that with respect. Oh, I'm not going to, you got to respect me. Or respect is earned. well, actually, I can give respect without receiving it.
Yes.
I can give love without receiving it. I can do that for my own self. I'm just going to respond with kindness because that's what I'm working on. And by the way, it doesn't always work. Like there are mornings you wake up and you're frustrated. We're human. And I think a beautiful thing my teacher said to me recently, he said, why are you giving yourself these unrealistic expectations? And it was so beautiful what he said. He said, if you say to yourself, I'm gonna work out every single day this month, and then you miss one workout, you know what you normally do? You end up missing 3 or 4 because you're kind of ashamed that you missed that one. So you kind of fall off the wagon. Yeah. The truth is, stop giving yourself this crazy expectation and give yourself some self-compassion. We're not perfect. We're flawed. So if I missed that workout, you know what? That's okay. I'll get back on it tomorrow. And the same thing goes with anger, with frustration. You're allowed to fall and stumble and then realize you can get back on. And that's the biggest thing I'm working on because I'm a perfectionist. I want to, I want to get this learning right. But it doesn't end here. It's if it ends, I die. And then I get probably come back and learn again. Which is, by the way, anyone wants to understand, you and I have talked about this, Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss is a very good book to read to kind of just give yourself an idea of why thinking about reincarnation is such a beautiful way to look at life.
Yes, absolutely.
But these are the things you and I talk about.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's people like get on the podcast and they're like, we're going to talk career and everything else. And I said, I want to do Jay's because we're probably not going to talk any career.
And for me, it's just this coming from #NoDaysOff. Yeah. So when I met you, it was #NoDaysOff, and I'm going down on a personal, but we worked out together. I have never thrown up that bad in my life. If you remember.
Yeah, I was a little out of control with the expectations of working out at the time.
I
was like, are you okay?
We worked out together. We did this crazy circuit, and I don't like high intensity for anyone who's listening or watching. And literally, we did this workout, and you could tell Scooter's got a completely different body to mine. I'm
not like I was back then, but I will say you are competitive.
Yeah.
Because you would not tell me you weren't okay. And I just said, Jay, you look a little, no, I'm good. Let's keep going. Yeah. And there were 3 of us and you didn't want to be the one person falling out. And then finally, excuse me, you're spitting. Finally, you literally sat down on the ground and you're like, I'm not okay. And you said, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and you disappeared for a good 45.
Yeah, literally. I was puking like anything, but it was just, I've always had that spirit of wanting to see how far I can go. And when I did that as a monk, there were experiences that broke me because we were doing crazy fasts, crazy meditations, and all it brought me back to was the realization that I wasn't Superman.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm hearing from what I'm hearing you say too, is the idea of like, no matter how able you are and how capable you are and the boundaries that you push, we all still have
and you're going to fall again.
Correct.
I'm having this learning and having this epiphany. I'm going to break again.
Yeah.
And this time I have tools to put my hand on my chest and say, we all suffer. The world is filled with suffering. Give yourself some self-compassion.
Yeah.
And give it to others. Yeah. And it's been a beautiful thing. And I credit some amazing people in my life who really pushed me to go there. And when you go there, there's also sadness, realizing how many things you missed because you were planning for something in the future. How many times you weren't present because you thought you had to protect something that you already had, and I'm just grateful. I'm not going to spend another 39 years not knowing these things.
Yeah.
And I look forward to every 5 years telling you another level of learning.
It has to be that way.
And I weirdly, like, the falls are where the greatest learnings are.
1,000%. And that's the problem, right? What you just said about missing a day of a workout and then it ends up missing 4 days. It's the same when we go, okay, well, now I'm not going to fall because I found a new place of enlightenment. And what we don't realize is, again, like you said, it may not be every 5 days, but every 3 or 4 years, there's going to be another moment of revelation. Yeah. And when you keep thinking, oh, no, this time I've got it, that's where the mistake is made, is like, oh, this time it's not going to happen. But tell me about, what does it take? Because I remember you discussing the Hoffman Project with me when we first met, and you were like, oh, I'm thinking of going to this, etc. I want to know a bit more about the process of Hoffman so that everyone can be exposed to and understand a bit more as much as they can. But also, like, what does it take for someone like you to go in that direction? Like, what does it take? What happened? What's going on in order to urge you and encouraging you?
It's not as significant.
Yeah,
like,
it's not. No.
It wasn't like, it was funny when I went, my wife and I started hearing all kinds of rumors of, oh, he's gone crazy and this, that, like, because I was away and, all kinds of weird things. But it wasn't that. It was just feeling like I wasn't present in my life.
Yeah.
And feeling like the people around me who loved me, I felt their hurt because, one, we're all coming in with our own trauma, and weirdly, our trauma was matching up. And I couldn't fix it. I'm a fixer. I'm the guy who, since I was a kid, I'm going to make it be okay for everybody. And there was this, I just couldn't fix things in this moment in time. And suddenly, because I couldn't fix things, I started to spiral. I started to literally lean more into my negative patterns of wanting to control things because I couldn't fix things. And my heart was in the best place. I wanted everything to be okay and everyone to be happy. But I couldn't get everything in the right place. And I'd been playing that chess game for so long, and the board was getting away from me. And suddenly I realized a very dark thought came into my head. The ultimate, I'm not enough. The ultimate, I shouldn't be here. And that's not me.
Yeah.
And when that thought entered my mind, I said, what are you doing here? I said, whoa, I've never gone that dark.
Yeah.
And I signed up for the Hoffman process the next day.
Why Hoffman? Tell us a bit about it for anyone who doesn't know, because I think I love giving credit where it's due to places and retreats.
Started by a guy named Bob Hoffman. In the United States, there's one in the Napa area and there's one in Connecticut. An amazing woman named Liza was the one who is one of the co-CEOs with her husband, and it's a nonprofit. It's just an amazing process that really delves into spirituality, delves into early childhood, delves into your trauma, your patterns, and you give yourself over for basically 7 days.
No phone, no
email,
no even to your kids or your
no
wife.
working out, no book, no nothing. And
writing?
There's a lot of writing. What I will say to you is, I don't want to go into what the process is because it's important whoever does it
goes there.
is surprised. But what was interesting is I had certain people, you know what you need? You need to go to Hoffman. And I had canceled 4 times. And it was always a reason, I'm not going to go to this. I don't need this. Like, I'm busy. And one of my friends, who's one of the most brilliant friends I have, he said to me, when I went in to manipulate it so I can come out and show the people I love, look, I did this. Aren't you proud of me? Because someone that he loved had done it. And he looked at me and he said, you can't manipulate this. And I was fascinated that he said that because he's such a smart guy. And I'm like, what could they really do in a week? And he said, it's going to be the most remarkable experience of your life. And my other friend, Penny, had said it to me. And, and I decided I'm going to go. And it felt like it was gone for a year almost, and I really gave myself over to this process and made really amazing friendships. I wasn't like you share feelings and, different things. And I opened up in a way that I never expected. And I laugh now because I look back at the timeline of when we did things because I had this workbook and I realized that day 2, I remember having such an intimate conversation with my teacher. And I thought that must have been day 5. It was day 2, and
you went in deep.
Yeah, I went in deep and I uncovered a lot of things and I realized a lot of things about myself, about my patterns, about forgiveness for myself, understanding of things, forgiveness of others. And I was just eternally grateful. And what was interesting is when I came out, I had this, I'm so happy. I'm so in love with life and myself and the world and people. And I came back and I entered a lot of darkness. And the tools that I got at Hoffman allowed me to understand that the darkness was because that's what God wanted me to have. There were lessons that I needed to learn. I'd now been given these tools and there was no darkness. There was an opportunity to learn. There was an opportunity to go deeper every single day. And I always found that when I was doing my meditations, the biggest revelations were my deepest breaths. My longest, deepest breaths, I'd have the deepest revelations. And in one of my meditations, I realized that's life. I've been going around taking these quick breaths, treating my life that way. And I wasn't slowing down enough in life to take a deep breath and let it come to me. Um, and that just comes down to, self-forgiveness and, and a lot of beautiful things. And I'm really grateful to, the people. I will never say who I was there with because they don't do that. And no one has ever said I was there. This is actually the first time I publicly said that I was there. And it was a very cool thing. I'm very grateful. And now sharing this, there's so many other people who come to me of like their things of self-work that they've done. And they're like, you should try this and try this. And it's just a very exciting place to be. And I can tell you the greatest gift of all is for my children. I was a good dad before. I love my kids. I would come home every night and put them to sleep. And, and I'm married to super mom.
She's awesome.
And I am present with my children in a way that I didn't know possible before. And I think that's the greatest thing Hoffman gave me.
It's so beautiful listening to someone have that experience. Like I could sit here and just listen to you all day because it's so gratifying to the soul, like on a much more deeper spiritual level, to hear someone having that experience and doing that work. And how does that? And I do want to talk a bit about career on this level of frequency. Because what I'm fascinated by, and I think this is what people often don't see as symbiotic, is how spiritual insight leads to spiritual career practice. How does someone like you take this very profound experience and work? And by the way, having known you for a few years, like I know that this wasn't just 7 days of work. This is years and years and years and years of work.
There was a lot leading up to this.
Yeah, exactly. In 7 days, where the 7 days like accelerates and like really makes it powerful and meaningful. But you've been doing this for a while and thinking about these things for a while. How does that then manifest in your work? How do you take this energy? Is it how you're dealing with people? Is it how you're creating stuff? How does someone do that? Because I think a lot of people, even I get asked this question a lot, is like they see spirituality and business as like almost separate.
Yeah, I completely disagree.
Yeah, same.
The other thing I want to point out, because I've been thinking a lot about this, is that the same way I said that I believe you get the lessons when you're supposed to get them, I believe you're supposed to. I don't think I should have had this mentality in the beginning of my career. I think that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The universe wants me to be exactly where I am. So I needed to be a certain way at certain points to learn those things, for those things to happen. And now this is where I am at 39. And this is where I needed to learn. And now, I'm having a different kind of grace. I'm having a different kind of empathy. I'm understanding to let go and allow people to have their process and their journey in a different way, because I'm understanding my own in a different way. I'm not having this need to justify. There's times where I'm seeing how I'm like, well, they're seeing my growth as like, oh, he got there, and I'm sitting there like, well, you haven't got there either. And I'm smiling to myself because it's not my place to say that, because it wasn't their place to say it to me. And I'm here to, it's almost funny. We talk about different religions, you and I, and I'm Jewish. I've grown up in a Christian society, and I've gotten to a place also where understanding I don't want to live my Judaism in fear. Thousands of years of persecution gave us strength, but also a lot of fear, and telling us we can't go near something. Yet, Moses married Zipporah, who was not Jewish. And when he brought her to his people and he said, she loves me and everything, no one questioned that. Everything. Just years of assimilation and losing identity caused us to have a tremendous amount of fear. And I don't want to live with that fear anymore. I want to explore other spiritualities and be true to myself and my own. I'm not afraid to hear the wisdom of another spirituality. So, my friend, he was giving a sermon. He's Christian. And I listened and I thought it was beautiful. He was saying in the book of Matthew, it's not about saying it and teaching it. It's about living it and letting someone else see it. And I've now seen that, we've talked about it within your religion. And I'm trying to get to that place of like, I don't have all the answers. I'm figuring it out every single day. I am as flawed as they get,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to try to live my best self,
Yeah.
and, last night I did a Clubhouse talk with Demi,
Mm-hmm.
and she became my client over the past year.
Yeah.
And she's been through a lot. We have this amazing documentary coming out.
Absolutely.
And she and I were talking about her whole career. Every time she faltered, she has the strength to get back up, and people call her a role model. And she's like, I'm just afraid because it's just too much perfection to live in.
Yeah.
And then I always crash. And she started to do interviews for this new album. And she's like, I want to be a role model. And I called her up and said, what are you doing? I said, you're giving yourself that same perfection that caused you to fall before. I said, we got to change the word. And I thought about my brother Adam, who has a nonprofit called Pencil Promise. And he told me, I don't want to be called nonprofit. I want to be called For Purpose. I don't want to say what we don't do. I want to say what we do.
Totally.
And I said
Love
to
that.
Demi, stop calling yourself a role model. Let's go with real model.
Mm-hmm.
You're a real person, and you are flawed, and you are imperfect, and you are honest, and you don't have to be perfect ever again. And we like that, and that's how she's saying now.
Yeah.
And I think if we start treating ourselves and others with this same sense of, it's why I hate cancel culture. I mean, I understand we all have a lot of pain, but if we don't give people an opportunity for growth, what are we doing? We're just giving the next generation the same pain. And it's a hard thing to ask people. It's a hard thing to ask when you've been abused, when you've been persecuted, when you've been mistreated, to love your neighbor.
Yeah.
That's a very tall order. And I don't think it's my right to tell someone to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can choose to start doing it in my own life. And I can tell you it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I falter and I stumble sometimes. And I said to my wife just the other day, I said, hey, I caught myself the other day. I was upset with someone on how they treated me. So I made a comment to you that wasn't the kindest comment about them. It wasn't awful, but I just wasn't giving them their credit because I was upset about something that happened to me.
Yeah.
I said, if you catch me doing that, can you if you notice it, just tell me to stay in my heart. And she was like, I got you. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to stay there.
Yeah. And that's that accountability culture. Like, you have someone in your life that you're being accountable to, your wife in this example.
Yeah.
And like that feeling of, we do need accountability. We want to be accountable to ourselves, to the people we love, the people that are important. And I just want to point out, I don't know if you know this, how perfect it was that you said the real and role models thing. Tupac said, we need real models, not role models. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at you, and I'm like,
I'll take my shirt off.
Yeah, show me the more love, love more tab. But that's such a beautiful point. And I want to share this because we talked about this. And I struggle with that. So me and my wife, when we talk about relationships, we talk about our mistakes. If you listen to our podcast, she's been my guest 3 times. Every year we do an episode together and we talk about everything we get wrong. And the number one comment will be #relationship goals. Or the number one comment will be like #cutest couple or whatever it is. And my comment back will be, please listen to what I'm saying. And so what I find is that we've been conditioned and programmed to want someone to be perfect.
Yeah.
Demi, you, Justin, Ariana, whoever, me and my wife.
No
and
one's perfect.
None of us are perfect.
That's why when you and I talked once, I said, we're made to serve, not to be worshipped.
1,000%.
Because no one can live up to worship.
No one, apart from God.
God, that's it.
Yeah.
Worship God, serve each other.
Yes. I love that. That thought is perfect and beautiful. But that's what I mean, that because we've been conditioned to want to worship humans, we direct that worship into an athlete, into a singer, into a teacher, into a guide, whoever it is. But it's a shame that even when you have someone opening up and saying what it's actually like, our programming up here is so strong that we still project perfection. So now the new trend is, before it was, if you were flawless, or at least presented yourself as flawless, that was considered worship worthy. Today, now it's the opposite. If someone's really vulnerable, that's worship worthy. But the point is, what you just said is, let's move away from worship completely and let's just serve and support each other.
I want to say 2 things to this. One is about you and one is about me.
Okay. It's good. We're both in the room.
I'm going to go with you first, just because, and then I can end on me so you don't feel bad. A little over a year ago, you called me and you said, can we go for a walk? And we went for a walk. And I said, this is the unfortunate thing that we do to each other. We get to this place where we just want to tear each other down. And there's that line in Batman where they say, if you do it, well long, I forgot the line perfectly, but it's like, if you do it well long, right?
If you do something long enough,
you too will be the villain.
Yeah,
or something
I know exactly.
You know what I mean?
Wait, yeah. Wait, let me find it. It's a good line.
It's, I think Heath said it as the Joker.
Yeah. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Yeah, it's
there you go.
It's Batman. Yeah.
Yep, and that's so spot on, and what we do to each other. And for me, I recently watched the Queen's Gambit special, the show on Netflix, which was fantastic. And coming out of Hoffman and seeing that, I just had this epiphany that I had been this chess player my whole life. I had stared at the board, and people would come and show me attention and affection because of my skills on that board. So I thought, oh, that's love. So I'm going to keep playing this game. And people said, wow, you're really good at this. You're smart. You look at the career you're building. Look at the life you're building. The chess pieces are moving and moving and moving and moving. But I never took the time to stop, take a breath, and say, hey, I'm really good at this game. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm happy to. But my name's Scott. Nice to meet you. Until now. And so many people that loved me didn't know me. That's where the darkness was coming from, because I don't feel like I've changed. I feel like I've reclaimed myself. And that was the gift of this year. I've had so many friends, you've such a change. I shaved because when I was doing a meditation, I saw the spiritual version of myself that I wanted to be. I didn't have a beard. And I literally shaved that night, and I haven't had a beard since.
Yeah.
And I feel good because I went back and got me, and I love the person that I was all these years. And that's a part of me. I just reclaimed the rest of me. I was relying too much on one side of the body. I went and got the rest. And now I'm walking in a straight line and not putting so much pressure on my right foot.
Yeah.
That
must feel good.
It does. And I have this teacher now who literally, I will lay out things that have been done to me that are anyone else would be like, and he looks at me and goes, well, what role did you play?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing because you go through life just learning.
Yeah.
And, I think that's why, I would look and people would be, God forgave me. And I'd get frustrated growing up because I'd be like, you're just making an excuse using God.
Yeah.
But I actually now realize, why was I frustrated that they felt forgiven?
Yeah.
That was my stuff. I'm angry that they felt forgiven because I hadn't forgiven myself for something.
Yes.
And I had my own work to do, and I was projecting my stuff on them.
Yeah.
And the truth is, if we can all get to a place, if God sees everything that we're doing, he sees our messy, because we're all messy, but he loves our messy. If we can get to a place where we start to love each other in the messy, that's when you start to feel really loved. I started to love myself in the messy. Now I'm loving other people in my life in the messy. And that's real love. It's easy to love somebody when they're showing up for you all the time.
Yeah. It's
easy to love someone when
they're doing good.
When they're doing good and they're giving you this ideal of perfection that makes you feel good. Or not even perfection, they just make you feel good. It's so much harder to love somebody when they disappoint you.
Yeah.
And what I've started to realize is through my own actions, if someone's disappointed me or when I've disappointed someone else, it's because I'm really disappointed in myself. I'm projecting it onto somebody. And that's where that empathy comes from. And you and I could talk about this for hours. and I'm the first one to say, I'm scratching the surface of this.
Yeah.
I'm just figuring it out. I'm screwing up on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I'm just starting to really give myself empathy for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about it. And I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to dig in. And I'm excited to be present.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have long conversations with people and look them in their eyes. Like I'm looking you in your gorgeous eyes there. But I've always been, I want to honor you because I've always been grateful that you and I have had these conversations.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's been big for me because I think for me too, it's like you don't, when things are changing and moving and growing fast and you're not even aware of half the things, and you do a million things. And so And that's partly the mistake also, because you start recognizing, oh, well, if I'm not aware or if I'm not conscious of everything I'm doing, then maybe I do need to slow down. Maybe I do need to change something. Maybe I do need to find the right people to be around me. And it all comes back to everything's trying to remind you to be conscious, to be awake,
Yep.
to not try and get away with being asleep. Like everything's trying to wake you up all the time. Whereas we want to go to sleep in some areas of our life. We want to be, like you want to be able to just let go of this thing here, over here.
It's so exciting.
Yeah, it is.
When you
exciting.
start to have these discoveries within yourself that you want to share. So it's almost like, hey, the thing you've been learning the most when you're not talking, so it's like this dichotomy. And then there's that grace of just like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to be so hard on myself.
No.
If I'm excited today, maybe I'm going to overtalk. Yeah. That's okay. Tomorrow I can be quiet.
Well, this is an interview with you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it's giving yourself that grace of like, and that's another pattern. Like as a kid, like, you dim your light a little bit, like, oh, you're being too loud, and getting to a place in your life where, when your child is running in front of you and they're being louder, you're not holding a grudge against your child. We hold these grudges as adults against ourselves and each other. But when we watch children play, they move on so quickly. And I wish we can get back to a little bit of that, within ourselves. It's, even today, I found myself just now being like, oh, you're talking too much. And then maybe I am, but that's okay. Give myself a little bit of grace. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
And you know what? I can shut up too. And like, there's no right or wrong here. It's two friends having a conversation and a bunch of people listening, and everyone's going to have a different reaction.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. What does compassion mean? When we say being compassionate with ourselves, it means to change your behavior enough so that you've shown that you've learned, but it means to love yourself as you're growing and changing that
which
behavior.
Which is confusing.
It's confusing, but that's what it means, because when people hear the word compassion, they think, oh, you're just being soft on yourself. Like, oh, you're not judging yourself, which means you're not holding yourself accountable. But being compassionate means, I know I need to change my behavior. I'm going to start doing that, but I'm going to love myself while I do that.
And I think, I love that you said that, because let's take it a step further. Let's go back to that workout.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm actually being compassionate with myself, I'll get back on it the next day.
Yes.
We act as if we're, especially with cancel culture, we move in such a finite way. We don't think long term. We don't think in judging our lives. We judge in the moment, and then we judge moments later. So it's the compassion to me is, allow yourself to understand you're just in a moment in a very long story.
Yeah.
And your story is not written yet. You're just writing part of it right now. And a great story is never stagnant.
Yeah.
So how would your teachers tell you to treat each moment? Like, how do they say to go about it? Because the one thing I'm working on is, well, you still have to show up. You still have to show up to every moment. But how do your teachers tell you to show up to each moment? How do they tell you to treat it mentally as you go into it?
The biggest mantra that was stated at the start of a moment was, don't judge the moment. As soon as you label a moment, it now gets labeled in that jar or that box or that filing cabinet and cupboard. And then now you never reflect on whether that label was right or wrong.
So just be.
Because if you label, it's the labeling type. The mind wants to label things to make it simpler. That was a good experience. That was a bad experience. That was a good taco. That was a bad taco. That was a good restaurant. That was a bad restaurant. But as soon as you label it, you now don't allow that to become anything else. What if that restaurant evolves? So the idea of labeling simplifies for the mind, but actually makes the long-term complex. So the idea is, instead of labeling, allow yourself to experience, allow yourself to re-experience. And then if multiple experiences obviously give you the same experience, then you may put a label in pencil. But you're penciling labeling. You're not putting like a permanent marker.
You know what's funny? My teacher uses the word be curious.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not be definitive.
Yes.
Be curious.
Yes, exactly.
But I want to play this game with you a little
Let's
bit.
do it.
I want to challenge you a little bit.
I love it.
Only because I want people listening to your podcast to hear you respond to this stuff, because I think you're brilliant about this. For those people who are listening to this podcast saying, okay, I get all this growth and learning and everything else, but COVID's been hard and I don't have a job right now and I can't pay my bills. And I've looked up who Scooter Braun is, and this guy financially, he's not in the same place as me, and he's out of touch, and he can talk about all this spiritual learning, but he doesn't know what I'm going through. They're right. They're right. I do not know their experience. I don't know anyone else's experience. I only know my own. But what I wanted to ask you is, what is your response to someone who is saying, this is easy to talk about, but what about in this capitalistic society that I live in? If I'm doing all this, I think I need to kind of just bury my head in the sand and just work. I don't have time for feelings and relationship. I need to get this money.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've gone on this new app, Clubhouse, many times.
Yeah.
And I go into these rooms and I hear everybody talking about, get this money. How do I get to the top? How do I do this? How do I do that? And every time I go in a room, I keep trying to stay. The top of the mountain isn't what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of push you on that, because you have extraordinary people who are living extraordinary lives coming on here. And there are a lot of people out there, and I was once in certain positions, but I'm not in that position right now. And I'm sensitive to that, and I'm compassionate to that. What do you tell somebody who says, this is all nice and everything, but I don't have that liberty?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is that we all get to choose what our intention right now in life is. And if that's the intention that makes you happy and suits you, that's fine. Like I don't even want to edit it. I don't even want to convince you of anything, because I remember being in a similar position myself, not so long back, a few years ago. And I know that I had an intention to make a choice. At the same time, I would say to them, if you're open to the idea that there is a better, smarter, more fulfilling way to go about making money, building a business, finding your way to the top, whatever you want to call it, then this is that path. And if you're open to that, then what you're hearing from Scooter, but again, what I loved you said, and you actually made this really clear, there was a mindset, you've got to this at the right time for you.
Yeah.
Which I'm remembering, because that means that person, whoever's saying that, is going to get to this. I don't know anyone who I meet who doesn't get to this. Whether they're a billionaire or whether they just started out. I was lucky enough to get it at 18 when I met my monk teachers. This is the stuff I was talking about at 18 years old, because that's what I was given in this life. And there are some people that I've met that have taken till 70 to get it. Some people are in their 30s. And the point is that you are going to have to get here at some point. Everyone's going to have to get to this point.
And you need the context from before.
Correct.
That's what
but
I
just
love
do
this.
whatever you do intentionally.
That's my teacher said to me, he goes, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And it's, Coretta Scott King said, each generation has to fight the fight all over again.
Yes.
All of us, none of us get out unscathed.
No one.
And all of us get the blessing of the journey.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, the teaching we all get in our Judeo-Christian society of Adam and Eve. And this idea that we sinned and we were cast out.
Yeah.
We were punished. We were cast out. We realized we were nude. We were ashamed. That's why we started wearing clothes, all this different stuff. And I started thinking about that as a parent, because we're all God's children. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, let me rephrase this in my mind. When I give my child a consequence or a punishment, I don't do it because I'm mad at them.
Yeah.
I do it because I love them and I'm trying to guide them to an important lesson.
Yeah.
And I realized that my idea of this idea that the original sin took place was wrong.
Yeah.
I believe that all of us, because God loves us and wants us to learn, are given the gift of life and the gift of struggle.
Yeah. And
the gift of being cast out so that we can go and get the context we need to appreciate the Garden of Eden, the heaven.
Yeah.
So the spirituality, the enlightenment. Mm-hmm. And it's been an exciting way to look at things now.
Yeah.
That everything, that's why I loved reading Many Lives, Many Masters, because when I kind of realized that a lot of major religions in spirituality actually all
believe in
reincarnation. Kabbalah talks about reincarnation. Yeah. A lot of major religions talk about reincarnation in their spirituality practices.
Yes.
And when you read this book, which is a true story, and you kind of understand that if you just kind of accept that you get to come back and you're always learning, you start to not fear death anymore. Mm-hmm. And you start to realize this is going to be hard. There are days my heart's going to ache. There are days I feel like I can't breathe because I'm hurting. But all of those feelings, all of that is helping us learn things and give us context for greater lessons.
Yeah.
And I'm in it and I'm excited. And I know that the funny part is I've come to terms with the fact of like, oh, I'm not here to have this great life. I love my life and I'm grateful. And I'm going to, like I've told you, I'm going to keep pouring my glass in other people's glasses.
Yeah.
But I think the thing I'm most thrilled about is now I understand that pain is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Happiness is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Joy is coming. Heartache is coming when I least expect it. Because the fact that I wake up every morning and I'm still breathing means that there's something else for me to learn. I kind of take some joy in that now.
Yeah. But see what you just said, that when you just said at the end, that last statement you said, but I take joy in that now. This sounds intense, but it's actually beautiful. And that's where the joy part comes in. So when we were trained, the scripture would say that life is about education, not enjoyment. Like life's about enlightenment, not enjoyment. Now, what I mean by that is the joy of learning is the joy of life, but we are seeking enjoyment through the temporary pleasure, through the external satisfaction, through the quick win, through the top, through the mountain, whatever it may be. And as soon as you switch that, so every area you walk, if you walked into every room today and you went in there and said, how can I learn from it and how can I serve in it? Versus how can I enjoy this moment?
I love that.
That's the difference.
I love that.
We walk into every room going, how can I enjoy this? You see a woman or a man, you go, how can I enjoy them? You see a house, you go, how can I enjoy this?
You know what's funny? I'm thinking to myself, well, where's the struggle? The struggle is when I haven't learned the lesson from the last room and I'm still stuck on that lesson and I got to walk into the next room.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to get in a vicious cycle. And, it's like you start to falter. Give yourself that grace of, hey, let's slow down. Let's take that big, deep breath.
Yeah.
Let's reset. It's why, when you went on that trip together, you guys were waking up every morning and meditating.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I've learned TM. I now meditate every morning.
Yeah.
And it has changed my life.
Yes.
And you know what? Let me rephrase that. I try to meditate every morning.
Yeah.
There are days that I miss.
Yeah.
And now I give myself the grace of, I'll get back on it tomorrow. Or maybe I'll do a quick one tonight.
Yeah.
I'm not, I meditate every day.
Yeah.
I enjoy meditating. I like what it does for me. And if I miss one, I give myself that grace and I get back on the horse tomorrow.
Yeah. But that's what I mean, that the joy, like people go, well, then where's the fun in life? If I'm always learning, where's the fun? The learning is the fun part. Like when you come into a new place and like your teacher said, you're curious. Like when you came in here, you were like looking at the quotes, looking at the people. You're not trying to enjoy the art. You're like curious and you want to learn. That is the fun of life.
That's childlike.
That's childlike, exactly. Where a childish mentality is to enjoy.
Well, it's funny. As I started diving into all the different major religions, there's a quote in almost every major religion that talks about God. If you like, they ask Jesus, they say, show me God. And he says, look at the child.
Yeah.
And in Judaism, they say it. And in Hindu, they say it. Like all these different, every religion, you'll find something that points to the child and the innocence of the child and the love the child has. And, for me, I talked to someone who actually went to Hoffman after me. And, this person hit me up and they were like, I'm losing the high. Life is pulling me back in. I'm getting depressed. I'm losing the high that I had 3 weeks ago when I got out. How do I get it back? And I said, I don't know if I'm right, but I'll try and answer this question. And the way I'm going to answer it, I don't know if you're going to like. I said, you got a high because you dealt with your worst demons. And then you gave yourself forgiveness and you learned. If you want to get that high again, stop looking for the happiness. Look for the resistance. Look for the lessons in the resistance. And when you have the epiphany again, you'll get that high back.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point I'm making, is that we're looking for the high in life constantly. We're looking for the enjoyment. We're looking for that release, that fun moment. But you got that experience from the work.
Yeah.
Right? And that's such a beautiful way of looking at it. Tell me about some of the projects that you're working on right now that excite you the most, that you feel like allowing you to love more. Some of these could be, I know, SB projects, media work, but it also could be some of the philanthropy work that you're doing that behind the scenes, some of the work that you feel so excited and proud of, because I also want to give you an opportunity, as I want everyone who's listening to have the opportunity, to celebrate the stuff that they're excited about. Because again, you'll dim your own light. So I'm going to ask you to
such
brag
a
about what you're doing.
no, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
but it's weird because of where I am right now.
Service-based.
Yeah, but even service-based, I mean, I am having the most joy out of watching people that I supported have their own wins.
Mm,
Weirdly, that is my biggest joy right now.
mm,
Watching Justin Bieber take ownership of this album the way he has, ownership of the performances the way he has, ownership of his decision making the way he has. This is the most hands-on he's ever been in his career. This is the most he's fought to push back on all of us to say, I got this. And I told him the other day, proud is not the word. I respect it.
mm,
I respect it so much. I'm so happy to see where Ariana is in her personal life, in her decision making, in her choosing to face so much trauma she's been through publicly, and be the person that she is. I'm grateful watching this Demi documentary. Like, I'm blown away by her.
I can't wait to see it.
Andrew Watt just won Producer of the Year. I know the year and a half that he's had. And for him to come out the other side and then tell me the Grammy was amazing, but the work I'm doing on myself has been the greatest reward. I mean, I'm really proud of a lot of people in my professional life. And then I'm really proud of the people in my personal life because I'm seeing them do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird, like, the accolades for me aren't necessarily the fact that I'm moving the chess pieces. I did that for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I'm seeing all these other people who've been around me in my life and I'm looking over at their chessboard and I'm admiring their game.
Yeah.
I'm admiring their game and I'm admiring who they are and I'm admiring who they're showing up to be. And I'm just admiring their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not passing judgment. I'm just enjoying watching. I'm curious.
Yeah.
And to me, the funny thing is, in the last 6 months, since I've let go more, commercially, I think I've had more success than I've ever had in my life because I'm trusting. And I think there's a weird reward in trusting the universe because I'm finding that joy, and things have not been easy at times. But I'm leaning into those uneasy times and saying, what is this resistance? Like, why am I hurting? What does that really mean? What is there for me to learn there? And I'm doing that as often as I possibly can. That's what I'm celebrating. That's what I'm excited about. I'm getting to a deeper place, and I'm hoping that my friends like you hold me accountable in 6 months when I start getting out of that.
Yeah.
And remind me of this and say, are you doing your meditations? Have a little, self-compassion that you've missed a bunch.
Now you're giving me permission to do that.
Yeah, I want that because I think that's what friends are for, right?
If you give them permission.
I give you full permission to keep me accountable, to make me continue to learn. The same way I said to my wife, tell me to get back in my heart. And I think we all should be that for each other, but not in a judgmental way.
Yeah. I'll probably reach out and say, let's meditate together today.
Yeah, sure.
That's what I'll do. So that I'm accountable too.
Yeah.
Because
I like I said, I've always been grateful for our friendship. I've been grateful knowing that I have a friend who's as spiritual as you are and enjoys the conversations of spirituality, because it allows, you push me and you inspire me, and I'm grateful for this friendship.
Well, you're the same, man. I feel like the way you've opened up today, and this is what this is what I try and do on this podcast. Everyone who's been listening or watching, for me, I like learning about the full human. So when I sit down with someone, I'm not seeing them as an athlete or a manager or a artist, or I'm seeing you as a complete spiritual being. And I want to hear that story. So when you're listening to this, whoever's listening or watching, listen to that story with every one of our episodes, and this one included as well, because it's so easy to listen to interviews these days and people pick out the one little thing and then that becomes the meme and the whatever it is. And it's like, but you missed the point of the whole conversation. Like, again, what we've been encouraging for our own selves as well. just as if you don't give someone else the permission to have context, we are blocking ourselves from having context of our own self.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I've learned from today, hearing you say it, which reaffirms my belief of the understanding that if you're not giving someone a chance to explain, express, be curious, make mistakes, then you're basically blocking yourself from doing the same thing.
Agreed.
And the more permission you give everyone to do that, the more
And
it
give
happens.
yourself permission to say, what was my role?
Yeah, I love that. What was my role? Was a
Because I
big
think
one.
that's where it starts. If you can forgive yourself
Yeah,
for something you might not even recognize,
yeah,
then it's much easier.
yeah.
You asked me what happened earlier, and I was thinking about that just now. Like, is there a specific thing that happened?
No, yeah.
You know what happened? My wife, Yale, and my children. I learned I love somebody more than me. And loving them made me go do the work. So what happened is they were the greatest gift in my life. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah.
And I want each of them to have their own individual process and their own individual journey.
Yeah.
And I want them to know that I love them and they're messy.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful for them. That's it.
Yeah. I love that, man. And I'm so grateful to you. I want to say it back to you because, when I've gone through my tough times, you really get to see who shows up for you, especially when they're a newer friend or someone you're just getting to know. And when you've stuck by me and supported me, we've never had a relationship. It's not just like, oh yeah, we're boys. Like, it's not like that. It's, let's look in the mirror. What work have you got to do? What do you need to work on? Where are you? What is your role in this? Like, that friendship, I think, is so special. And then feeling support from that. Again, loving your friends through growth, loving yourself through growth, making sure that you know you need to change, but you love someone through that change. Scooter, we end every interview with the final 5, which are the rapid fire, fast 5 questions. So you have to answer in 1 word or 1 sentence maximum.
Let's go.
I am judging you on you if you talk too long this time. and I will ask you to expand when I get intrigued. All right.
Okay.
So starting with your first question. You ready? All right. The first question is, what's the best advice you've ever received?
David Geffen told me that, well, first it's love more, but really what comes to mind is David Geffen told me that in 100, if you don't know who he is, look him up. He said in 100 years, no one's going to remember me, so they sure as hell won't remember you. Don't have an ego. And I loved it.
That is a great piece of advice. All right, second question. What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
I think as a kid, you're told it's your fault. And you start to believe, oh, I'm a bad kid. I deserve that. And I think that was the wrong advice.
Beautiful, man. All right, number 3. Something that you are pretty sure and confident about, but other people don't quite wrap their head around yet.
That Bitcoin will eventually be worth 500,000.
Ooh, you think it's gonna?
I think long term,
Yeah.
yes, I believe in Bitcoin long term. And there's a lot of people that don't believe in it, but I believe in Bitcoin long term.
Okay, all right. Well, we didn't even talk about that. So now, Bitcoin followers, which I don't think I have a lot of, we'll figure it out. All right.
We didn't talk any business, which is a lot of fun for me.
Yeah?
We didn't talk any business, a lot of fun.
Because that's not my thing.
Well, also, look, you know this, 90% of what I do in business, people don't even know, which is the way I like it. So let's keep going.
Well, no, for me, it was just, the reason why we didn't talk about business is because when I started the podcast, it was all about what can I talk to people about that no one else can do.
It's also, right? You and I don't have that relationship, nor should we.
Yeah.
We have a real relationship. It's not about business. It's about the person in front of you.
Totally. And also just like you're prolific. You can talk about so many different things in so many different places, but this, we're going to talk about it. Like, this is
also fun for me because you have treated me the way I actually want to treat myself. Like I told you about the chessboard of raising my head up and saying, hi, nice to meet you. I'm good at this. And I remember one time you called me and you said, hey, I don't want to over ask, but like we're friends. And, I'm trying to think about investing if you have any advice ever. And that was great because I love that. I want to be able to help a friend. And if I'm good at something, I want to be able to offer that. But you've always looked across the table and said, hi, I'm Jay. Hi, Scott, Scooter. Nice to meet you. Let's be friends. And that's why I love this conversation. But sorry, go back to your rapid fire. Rapid fire.
No. We got 2. Yeah, this is the worst rapid fire
ever. Let's get back to it.
All right. Last 2 questions, 4 and 5. Now I'm like, I've got 2 questions left for you. What do I ask you? I know what the 5th one is.
You're going to have 3 more because I've done a poor job with the other ones.
No,
we'll see if we can go one word.
No, you've actually given beautiful answers. We got distracted off the last one. Number 4, something you once chased and no longer care about.
Recognition.
And 5th and final question, if you could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
Love more.
Beautiful. Scooter Braun, thank you, man.
Thank you, my friend.
This was so special. This goes down as one of the most beautiful open conversations.
Well, let's end it right. Scott Scooter Braun, because now you know all of me, buddy.
So now I call you Scott from now on.
You can call me Scott, Scooter, whatever you want, but now it's, all of me is here. I went and did that, and I got to tell you, I'm so grateful we did this, and I'm so grateful for your friendship, and I'm just proud of you as a friend for the message you delivered to the world.
Thank you, man. And I'm proud of you for having the courage to always be open and vulnerable and honest and live your truth, and for doing the work when externally you don't need to. That's the hardest part, when actually, like you said, you could convince yourself to not do the work because things are good.
If we're breathing, it means we got work to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much.
Love
you, buddy.
Man. That's awesome, man. If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.
There will come a time where you will want to give up, where you will run into a roadblock and you will say, is this worth fighting for? And you will say to yourself, it's not. It's better for me to just move on, give up. But the person who you co-founded the company with will say, we got this. We can get through this. And there will be other times where those roles are reversed, where you are the person with the optimism. I have experienced that hundreds of times.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every single one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now, today we have an extremely special guest because his ability to understand, assimilate, and synthesize knowledge, insights, and information about building successful businesses, about finding our calling and following that calling are just second to none. Now, I'm talking about none other than Guy Raz, the author of the new book, How I Built This, and the host of the NPR podcast of the same name. He's a connoisseur of entrepreneurs, having interviewed hundreds of successful self-starters and researched what makes them successful. For years, Guy was a foreign correspondent for NPR and was the youngest bureau chief ever at the age of just 25. I can't wait to speak with Guy today and share this conversation with all of you. Guy, welcome to the podcast.
It's so great to be here, Jay. Thanks so much for having me.
No, thank you. I remember I think it was a few months ago when we were just DMing on Instagram and you kindly invited me to do your live event for How I Built This, which was unbelievable. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. But
so
I've been more excited about today because I want to hear from you.
I was so excited to have you on. It was so fun. We got incredible feedback. And I love your book. So I love what you do. And so it was great when you reached out. And I'm so glad that now we know each other. We're going to become friends.
Absolutely. I love it. And I want to actually start off with hopefully a different question than you get asked often. And it's what was the first thing you ever built as a child? How did your family, friends, parents respond to your first ever thing that you built?
I grew up in a fairly traditional, I'm not religious these days. I have a lot of respect, an immense respect for people who are religious and who are observant and practice religion. But I grew up in a kind of an observant Jewish home as a kid. My parents were immigrants, and it was really important for especially my mom to keep traditions. And so Friday nights were very important in my home as a kid. That's the Friday to sundown. It's the Jewish Sabbath. And Saturday, you kind of take a day of rest. Foreshadowing, I do that today, but for different reasons. And as a kid, it was really important that our house was clean and bright and ready for the Sabbath. It was just part of our tradition growing up. And so I was expected to clean my room and tidy it up. And every Friday afternoon after school, I would spend hours building these elaborate villages out of Lincoln logs. Lincoln logs, are you familiar with Lincoln logs? Do you know what those are? it was they're still around, but it was a classic American toy. Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln. The myth was that he was born in a log cabin, which is kind of true. And so they were these logs that had little grooves and niches in them, and you could build these elaborate homes and structures out of them. And I would build these villages in my bedroom as a kid for my dad when he would come home from work. My dad was not particularly observant. It was my mom really who this was part of our tradition at home when I was a kid. And so I would spend hours building these elaborate villages out of Lincoln logs and then eventually Legos. And I loved it. It was like a wonderful creative outlet. Of course, you don't think about that when you're 8 or 9 years old, but it was a way for me to kind of express myself and also show my parents something I was proud of, and then feel pride when they were excited about it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I remember doing similar. I used to play a lot with Lego and Playmobil and some of this similar style of toys. And I remember creating lots of villages and castles and boats. And I actually miss it now that I'm talking to you about it.
I know.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to go build a train track. But yeah, I need to go and get back into it. It was so interesting building it out. And I feel when I go to places like, I don't know if you have that in the US. We have in the UK, we have Legoland, which is like...
there are a few in the US. Yeah, there's one in San Diego, yeah.
Yeah, and whenever I go to those, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like there's just such a fascination towards building a city or a town out of something very small. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. And I noticed recently also on Instagram, you posted an old press pass from your high school newspaper. And so you've been a journalist and a reporter and a interviewer for a very long time. Do you remember the first story you ever covered?
Yeah, it was my Hebrew school newspaper. Again, I grew up having to go to Hebrew school. It's like going to Catholic school. You sort of something that you do, and then some people kind of. But it was really an important thing when I was a kid, and I was the reporter for the Hebrew school newsletter. So it was about it was like some one of the classes did a performance and sang songs, and I wrote about that. I was a journalist, kind of a journalist. I was interested in journalism from a very young age, and I don't say that to sound like some kind of precocious kid. It's not that I was precocious. What it was, Jay, was that I have always been, as a kid I still am, even though I do these very public jobs now, I am, and I think you have a lot of this too, I'm super introverted and actually quite shy. I'm not the kind of person that can easily go into a room and just start shaking hands. It's a very American characteristic, by the way, the charisma, which is something that I can find and have found over time as I've had to do public things, but it doesn't come naturally to me. What journalism gave me was was this kind of psychological pass in my mind to talk to anybody. Naturally, I'm not the kind of person that would just go up and say, hey, I'm Guy Raz. How are you? Nice to meet you, and make small talk. It doesn't come easily to me. But when I had a notepad in my hand, and this was going back all the way to high school, I felt like as a high school kid, I could go up to other kids in high school and ask them questions because it was for the newspaper. I was a reporter. And so I was doing a job on behalf of something bigger than me. And that was what attracted me to it. It was this idea that it was like it opened a world to me that I couldn't access without that notepad, that safety net.
I love that answer. That is such a brilliant way of thinking about it. And I couldn't agree with you more. We definitely have that in common. I feel like when I told you about how my parents forced me to go to public speaking classes, it wasn't that after I finished the classes, I was just happy being a public speaker. It was not until I actually discovered the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas and the spiritual texts that I studied that I felt like I was speaking about something more than me and beyond me and far more fascinating and interesting than I was. And so then I had the confidence to share it because I felt I'd come across this treasure mine of wisdom and I had to share that wisdom with the world. And so I can identify very closely with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's this thing that it's like there's no explanation to it, because why did I feel empowered with a notepad and then eventually a microphone in my hand? I mean, it just, something in my brain clicked, and it enabled me to feel safe and comfortable approaching people and having conversations and not being worried about being judged because I was gathering information. And that was a strong gravitational pull for me. It's what attracted me initially to this profession. And later on it would evolve, and I would do it for other reasons. But that was really the beginning. So yeah, I mean, I've got my high school press pass still to this day. I just happen to have it, but it really is what I eventually would do with my life.
Yeah, you've encouraged me to go dig up some old things from my life. I think it's always fun looking back. For anyone who's listening and watching right now, I'm talking to Guy Raz, How I Built This, The Unexpected Paths to Success from the World's Most Inspiring Entrepreneurs. Here is the book. We've got the link in the description, so you can go and grab a copy anytime while you're listening. Guy, what I'm fascinated by, and I was saying this to you earlier, I think you've done a phenomenal job of breaking down the entrepreneur journey. I mean, you've done so many interviews with so many incredible people, and I can't imagine how you'd even start to write this book. But I do want to honestly say that I thought everything from the titles to the chapters to the structure was just wonderful to see. And I'm honestly, and I'm not joking at all, I'm thinking about pursuing a new business venture, and I'm going to follow your book while I do that. And I can't wait to tell you how it goes. So that's a side note. But one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about is a question I get asked a lot. And it's about this ideas of like, how do I know if this is the thing I should be doing? And I think we hear this a lot, and I'm sure you hear it a million times. And people are like, well, what do I start with? Like, how do I know if this is what I love? How do I know if this is my passion? How do I know if this is the idea? And you start off the book by telling people to be open to ideas.
Yeah.
Tell us about how someone finds the answer to that question.
Probably the question that people ask the most, I'm sure you get this question the most of almost any question, which is, how do I know? How do I find an idea? The answer is, you don't always know right away, right? And the reality is that most of the time, the way we come across an idea is because we have a problem ourselves, a problem we need to solve for ourselves. And as we begin to interrogate how to solve that problem for ourselves, it starts to crystallize in our mind that maybe that problem is a problem other people have and could solve other people's problems. So a great example of this is my friend Tristan Walker, who was on How I Built This. Tristan is an entrepreneur, a brilliant entrepreneur, and he is a Black man. And he knew and knows that razors were not designed for most Black men, because most Black men have curly hair. And when they shave, oftentimes the hair in their beard grows back into their skin. And most razors in the United States and sold around the world by Gillette and other companies have 4 or 5 blades that are designed to cut the hair under the skin. The problem is when it grows out, it grows back into the skin, especially for men with very curly hair, and it affects mainly men of color. And he knew that this was a problem for him, and he knew it was a problem for his friends, but nobody was addressing this problem. And in his mind, he thought, why isn't there a beautiful product as good as a Gillette razor, as beautifully packaged, available in the same aisle where Gillette razors are available? Why doesn't that exist? And that was the genesis of the Bevel razor, which is now part of the Procter & Gamble company, one of the biggest multinationals in the world. They bought the company, and Tristan is the CEO. But it's a great example of a problem that he needed to solve, and that solved a problem for millions of men whose day-to-day routine was, in many cases, pain. It was not just painful, but it was also psychologically painful because of the scarring that occurred and just the physical pain of dealing with that. And that is how you begin to come up with ideas. You begin by interrogating your own problems, the things that bother you or that need to be improved. And we see these all the time. Jay, how many times have you been somewhere, and I know anyone listening to this has experienced this, you're waiting in line somewhere for a coffee, or you're at a restaurant, or you're in a shop, and you think to yourself, God, they could do X so much better if they did it like this way. Or, man, if they just tweaked that, then the outcome would be so much better for the customer. That's when you start to kind of connect the dots and say, wait a minute, maybe I can do that. Howard Schultz loved coffee, and he loved this one little coffee place called Starbucks in Seattle. But guess what? They didn't sell coffee. They only sold coffee beans. They sold great coffee beans, but you had to go brew it at home. But he wanted to have the coffee there. And so when he bought this little shop, he decided to turn it into something much, much bigger, which today is, I think, the second biggest food company in the world. And it was all because he saw a problem that needed to be solved.
I think that's such a great place to start for anyone who's listening or watching right now, because it's something you experience. It's not something you have to think about. You don't have to do a brainstorm. You don't have to get a pen and paper out. You don't have to be reading lots of books. It's something that we do almost intuitively. I think my biggest problem that I would love to solve right now is me and my wife never know what to watch on any of the streaming platforms. And I spend every night like flicking through, like, do we want to watch this show? Oh, what's this trailer? What do you think? Oh, no. All right. Do we want to watch this? And we spend the whole night, and I'm not coming up with a solution for this, but it is interesting that would be a great starting place.
Exactly.
If I wanted to, because it's something that caused me a lot of pain on a daily basis. I'm sure it causes a lot of people a lot of pain on a daily basis, at least friends that I know. And therefore it would be a good thing to start on.
This is a huge challenge, discoverability, with not just with video content, but with audio content too. And so many people are trying to figure out how to solve this problem, because I think for most of us, we go by recommendations from friends. In my case, watching things is really challenging, Jay, because I am a sort of a weirdo when it comes to watch. Like, I don't like anything violent. I don't love things. I mean, I'm personally very open and to the world and to ideas but I've got two little kids, so it's hard to watch things with a lot of like sexual content or violence, or not only because they're around, but I don't really want to see that. It's hard for me to see it. I can't, like, I appreciate Quentin Tarantino as a genius, but it's hard for me to watch his movies because they're so violent, even though they're sort of cartoonish violence. Breaking Bad, I stopped watching it after 3 or 4 episodes. It was too violent, even though it's amazing. So I agree with you. I hear you. Like, I have a really hard time figuring out what to watch. I end up watching like a Wes Anderson movie or something that's fairly innocuous,
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the closest I've got to a solution is I really trust votes on IMDb. So I believe that if anything is above 8 on IMDb, it's going to be epic, and it always fits. And if anything's above 7 on IMDb, it's usually a good watch. If it's a 6, I'm setting myself up for a bit of disappointment at the end of the night. And if it's anything lower than a 6, it is going to be the biggest waste of my time. But I love your answer of starting with a problem, and that takes us inward straight away. It stops you from worrying about, like, will this be successful? How much money will this make? Will I be able to exit this company? All the things that, with the people you spoke to, and obviously they all went from a problem point of view with the couple of examples that you've so beautifully shared with us, and so many more in the book. How many people were really thinking or vocalizing or verbalizing their focus on the result? How many people started with anything to do with the result?
Almost none. I mean, the reality is that in virtually every case, for virtually every entrepreneur I've interviewed, they had a vision and an idea, and that vision and idea became something slightly or extremely different from how it started out. I mean, one of my favorite stories is a story of Slack, right? And by the way, Jay, I will add to that. I have never interviewed anybody who is purely motivated by money. Because if you're purely motivated by money, you're probably better off going into finance or getting a job as a lawyer, because you will eventually make good money. being an entrepreneur is super risky in terms of going for the gold. I mean, yes, you can make a lot of money, but virtually everybody I've interviewed is motivated by a problem and solving a problem and trying to fix something or build something. And the best evidence for that is the vast majority of people who sell their businesses after 10 or 15 years go and start something else or continue to work for the company that bought them out, because it's not the gold they're chasing. It's the challenge, and it's the team. It's the collaborative part of it. It's going into the office every day. I've interviewed people who have sold their businesses and then were kind of pushed out of the companies, and they became very, very miserable.
Yes.
Because they lost that connection to the people around them, right?
Yes.
So in terms of like thinking of an idea and it becoming something entirely different. I mean, one of the best examples of this is Slack. I mean, this is a product now that is used by so many people, especially in the pandemic era, right? My team uses it to communicate. Slack began as a massive multiplayer online game. It was called Glitch. Stuart Butterfield wanted to create a video game. He is a gamer. He's a friend of mine. He's a wonderful person, and he loves games. And he brought a team together. He had already had a successful business called Flickr that he sold to Yahoo. So he had a track record. He got investors. He brought this amazing team. They built this amazing game, and it wasn't successful. Nobody wanted to play it. Even though it was a beautiful game, it was way ahead of its time. And this is 2012. So they had to shutter the company. But what they realized very late in the game was that they actually built something entirely different, which was an internal communications network that allowed the software developers and the sales reps and the development people and the back-end people and the business people to communicate. Just an internal. But a friend of Stuart's from outside of the company saw it and he was like, "This is amazing. Can we use it for my company?" He's like, "Yeah, sure. Here it is. Here you go." That became the product. They did not realize that the revolutionary thing they were making was that. Didn't even have a name. They were trying to build this game.
Yeah.
But once they realized that they built something completely different that was really useful, that was the revolutionary product. So sometimes the idea sneaks up on you, and you have to kind of go through the other stages to get there. We just did a story about, and I can talk on and on about these stories. We did this story about the largest Mexican-American paleo food company in America called Siete Foods. It was started several years, great company, started several years ago by a brother and sister from Laredo, Texas, Miguel and Veronica Garza. Now it's the whole family's involved. They had no money. They really started this out because they built a CrossFit gym in Laredo, Texas. The family ran it, and the CrossFit gym basically ran out of money in the end. They couldn't keep it going. But Miguel's sister, Veronica, used to make tortillas for the customers of the CrossFit gym out of cassava flour and almond flour, because if you do CrossFit, there's a good chance you're eating a paleo diet. You're not eating grains. But you're in Laredo, Texas, which is like one of the capitals of Tex-Mex food. And if you love Mexican food, you're going to eat wheat and corn and beans. Well, she was going to these CrossFitters at their CrossFit gym and saying, "Hey, do you want to have a paleo tortilla? You want to buy some?" And that's how their business began. So it began as a CrossFit gym, which eventually morphed into a food business.
I had no idea about that, and I love that brand. Me and my wife love their sauces and their dips and their chips, and
they're incredible.
Yeah, they're really tasty, and we love them too when we don't want to eat grains or exactly what you're saying, like paleo diets. Like it's a great brand. I had no idea that was their story, and I love how you shared that point about the pivot and the discovery of a product is not how you expect it. One of my favorite chapter titles that you have in here, which in and of itself answers the question, but I really want to dive deep into it. It's chapter 3, and it's called "Leave Your Safety Zone, but Do It Safely." I just thought that was just told perfectly, because whether it's been in my own journey or when I'm speaking to people, And again, the number one question is, well, when do I know to quit my job? Like, should I quit my job and go all in? Is it because I'm not all in that it's not working? Or when do you know that, now it's time to bootstrap and get stuck in? And when you wrote that chapter title, Leave Your Safety Zone, but Do It Safely, I wanted to understand, how does someone practice that? How does someone bring that into reality? Because I think at one point or another, everyone gets to, okay, I know what my problem I'm trying to solve is. I've started the process. We've started to create something, but now it needs momentum. It needs money. It needs investment. It needs whatever else it needs.
Yeah.
How do you leave your safety zone, but do it safely?
There's a myth about entrepreneurs that they're all these kind of kamikazes, that they jump out of an airplane with no parachute. And the reality is that's just not true. The vast majority of entrepreneurs, as you know, Jay, mitigate their risks. I mean, look at your own story. You didn't just one day wake up and start making videos based on the teachings and learnings that you had assimilated as a younger man. You didn't just go off and start doing that. You were working for a bigger company, and you were making content for the company. And through that experience, that content was recognized by somebody else. Then you got a job at the Huffington Post. You built an audience, and then you had the confidence to go out on your own, because you knew by that point you had amassed this experience and you had built a platform on which to stand.
Yes.
This idea of leaving your safety zone but doing it safely comes from Jim Koch, who is the founder of Boston Beer Company, the company that makes Samuel Adams beer. And Jim Koch he had a very safe job. He had a career at Boston Consulting Group, but he wasn't happy. He wanted to do something else with his life. And he thought about creating a great American craft beer. This was in the early 80s when American beer, Monty Python was making jokes about American beer at the time, right? It was a joke. Today it's crazy to think about, because American craft beer is the envy of the world and beloved in Europe. But at the time, in the early 80s, it wasn't. So he started to experiment and research this idea on the side. But he kept his job, and he kept his job for a long time. And he kept working on this side project for a long time as well, until he started to dip first one toe, and then two toes, and then five toes, and then the whole foot, and then a leg. And then eventually he became comfortable and confident enough, and had saved some money from his job, that he gave himself the permission to leap, and to take the leap and to try it. Always knowing, by the way, that he could go back to his old job if it didn't work. Now, that doesn't mean that, it's an excuse not to try hard. It just means that there are ways to take risks and to take the leap, but to do it in a way that if it all falls apart, it's not going to be catastrophic. There's a fetish around failure, especially in Silicon Valley. There's a fetishization of failure. And people say, fail big, fail fast, fail. The reality is that when people talk about failure, especially at a place like Google or, Facebook, they can talk about it because those companies are already successful. The people working inside them have already had some successes. Failure is really important for all of us to experience, but failure can happen in small ways and medium ways, and even in big ways, but it doesn't have to be catastrophic. Failure should always be something that you can bounce back from, even if it's painful. It's super important to experience failure, but it's almost never a good idea to put absolutely all your chips on the table without some kind of mitigation plan. Not to say it's not important to take risks. You have to take big risks, but you also want to take those risks in a safe way.
Guy, tell us about some of the risks you took in a safe way, because you, like you were sharing about me, yourself, you've been a reporter, a journalist, you've been an interviewer. And so, today you're obviously known for being the incredible brand and the incredible host and of How I Built This, and then the name of the book. And just, you have all these amazing relationships where people open up to you in interviews and share their stories very vulnerably. Tell us about some of the risks you took to get to that stage as well, because I think often it gets forgotten that you've had to live all of this in your journey too, even though you're telling the stories of others.
Yeah, look, most of my career, I was I worked for one or two organizations, NPR and CNN, and I was a reporter, and it was a wonderful life and a wonderful career. But through those experiences, I was able to gain more and more experience. I was a foreign correspondent for 7 years. I covered 4 wars. I was based in 3 different countries. I reported from 50, 60 different countries. I was able to go to places I could never have imagined and meet people who were in desperate circumstances, but were also so incredibly generous. And I know you've seen that in places like India. You find that in the most deprived places in the world, people are actually the most generous. Those are the most generous people and the kindest people. And, you know, at a certain point in my career, I had to decide whether I was going to pursue this life as a news person, and pursue the life of maybe becoming a news presenter. And that there's a lot of prestige that goes with that. But about 10 years ago, it began to occur to me that if I was going to do something that was more meaningful to me, it had to be different. It couldn't just be about reporting the news. It had to be something that people connected to on a visceral level. And that was really the beginning of a journey that I started, where I wanted to tell stories about human experiences, and not stories about things that happened just at the moment, but stories that were evergreen, that were long lasting. And it was very scary for me to leap outside of this safe, comfortable job that I had, and to start production companies and to try this on my own. But by that point, I already had developed the experience and a platform. And I by the way, I did this later in life. I didn't do this when I was in my 20s. I did this in my late 30s, early 40s. And by the way, most first-time entrepreneurs are like 42 years old. There's another myth that it's all people in their 20s. It's not true. And there's a lot of reasons why it can often make sense to gain some experience before you leap out on your own. But that was a scary thing to do, not just to leave the news, but to kind of go off on my own and eventually to start programs and then make create a kids company that I now have with 2 amazing friends. We run a kids media company. We make children's shows and we do live shows, and we're making all kinds of content, and we've got books and so on. And it's scary because, you're on your own. You're sort of out there in the world without the safety net. But there comes a time, and I can't quite articulate it in words, but I think it's like it. You just kind of know it. There comes a time in your life, and I know you had this experience, where you say to yourself, I can do this. I got this. And I am not a risk taker. I am not a kamikaze. I am somebody who really needs that assurance. I didn't grow up with a lot of, I didn't grow up with family money. I financial safety was always important to me.
Yeah.
Having health insurance, those kinds of things. But there came a point in my life where I felt like I could do it. And I can't explain why, but I think it's because I had spent so much time in the trenches, learning the craft and trying to get better at it. And I continue to try and get better at it every single day. And so it was very intuitive. It was like there's this little, angel that landed on my shoulder and says, now's the time, you can do this. And I think that's, it's not a very scientific answer, but it's something inside of us that just gives ourselves permission to make the leap.
Yeah. Well, I think you did answer actually really well. And it's something I think a lot about. And I think it's something that's not talked enough about. And that's partly because of humility and modesty of some of the people we sit down with, even yourself today. I mean, what you just said of like mastering the craft. I think that it's such an untold story of repetition and actually building a skill. Like you developed skills, you developed a craft. And when you do that, your self-worth and confidence is natural and it's effortless in one sense. And it becomes something that you can share with others and it becomes contagious. I find that one of the biggest things missing in the journey of entrepreneurship today, at least in how it's being shared, is the point that at one point you have to actually have a skill. You actually have to master whatever it is. And your skill may be knowing how to iterate the best. Your skill may be, the skill doesn't need to be, coding inside out. Like, that's not the point. The skill could be, how to bring together a coder and a creative to make magic. And I think that that's just being so undervalued today. Like, you were a phenomenal reporter with lots of experience that therefore meant when you went out, you had confidence. And I think that's where that intuitive feeling calling comes from.
I agree. I mean, and by the way, I'm not a businessman. That's
Yes.
not my core competency.
Yeah, same.
And you're exactly right. Like, your skill might be you are a great people person, or you develop the ability to identify really smart people who can make things happen, or you get really good at getting people to do things for you because they believe in you. I recently interviewed Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of
Yes.
Apple, and his descriptions of Steve Jobs really brought that home, because Steve Jobs' talent was, of course, he had an incredible eye and an incredible sensibility of what would work, what was beautiful, and he had a great sense of beauty and also functionality. But he didn't invent the Apple II. He didn't invent the Mac. He didn't invent the iPod or the iPad. But they wouldn't have happened without him. Steve Wozniak created the Apple II computer and all the software, but Steve Jobs looked at that thing and said, "Let's make a beautiful case for it. Let's make this really easy to plug in. Let's make this really simple to use." And he couldn't code it, but he understood what people wanted, and he could direct people to make that happen. And that was his genius. He was not going in there with a soldering iron or tapping the keys with his fingers. His genius was he was conducting an orchestra.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that beautiful part. I believe it's in Walter Isaacson's book, or maybe in one of the other stories, of Steve Wozniak looking at Steve Jobs and he's saying, "What do you even do? You're not a coder. You're not a marketer. You're not an engineer. What do you even do?" And Steve Jobs supposedly replied, "Musicians play their instruments. I play the orchestra." And that idea of he wasn't a musician. He didn't know how to play the instrument, but he knew how to bring it together. Speaking of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, you have a whole chapter on here in the book called Finding Your Co-Founder. And it's so interesting because that's actually a stage at which I'm at right now in something I'm wanting to pursue. And I, like you, as you said, I don't consider myself a business person. That's not my core competency or skill set. It's not the part I find interesting or fascinating. It's something I've had to learn, but it's people that I've surrounded myself by to support me in that space. When you think about finding a co-founder, tell me about some of the biggest mistakes people may have shared, and tell me about the solutions to finding a good co-founder. Because I think we're also living at a time where, and I'll be open, when I was launching my businesses, a lot of people said to me, they said, "Jay, like, why would you have a co-founder? You could have 100% of 100%, and you have a brand, so you should protect that." And I was always like, "Hey, I'd much rather have more people involved and get excited and have more energy and more enthusiasm and build more things because we have other people." And so I've always had that mindset, but I think we live in a mindset today where it's like, no, own 100% of 100% and don't trust anyone. What are some of the mistakes we make, and what are the solutions?
I mean, there's a famous investor named Paul Graham, and his rule for investing in a startup. I mean, this guy is the founder of Y Combinator. He's an investor in Airbnb and all the companies that came out of Y Combinator. His rule of thumb is he only invests when there are co-founders. Now, not every business has more than one founder, and some work just fine with one founder. What I have found in interviewing hundreds of entrepreneurs who have co-founders, who started who have businesses that they created with another founder or more than one, is it is going to be extremely hard. Starting a business, it doesn't matter what business it is, will be very hard. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a celebrity. LeBron James, by the way, has Maverick Carter. They have a partnership, and they created a business around LeBron James, which is $1 billion business. Having a business partner or partners is crucial for the one simple reason, which is there will come a time on any journey where you will want to give up. where you will run into a roadblock and you will say, is this worth fighting for? Is this worth trying to get around? And you will say to yourself, it's not. It's better for me to just move on, give up. But the person who you co-founded the company with will say, we got this. We can get through this. And there will be other times where those roles are reversed, where you are the person with the optimism. I have experienced that hundreds of times with my children's media company. I have two partners, Meredith Halpern-Ranzer and Mindy Thomas. We make kids content, and we have live shows, and we do all kinds. And we're about to enter into a phenomenal partnership. There have been so many times on that journey over the last 4 years where one of us is just feeling so dejected or low, or we had a setback, or we tried to raise money and it didn't. We got a term sheet and then it was pulled. It's all these things have happened. And at every step of the way, there was one out of the three of us who was like, we got this, guys. We've had really low points and really incredible high points. That is absolutely crucial. You need somebody in your life who can reassure you, because you will have moments where you want to give it all up. How you find that person is partly luck. But partly it's about finding, of course, somebody who has complementary skills, somebody who can do things that you cannot do, who has competencies that you don't have. But most importantly, you have to find somebody you like, you trust, respect, and can get along with. Because ultimately, the thing that breaks partnerships up in every case, professional partnerships, is the same thing that breaks up romantic relationships up. It's differences of outlook. It's an inability to communicate. It's an inability to work through tension. There will always be tension with partners. But when you have a partner with whom you have agreed that you will be transparent, open, and communicative with, you will be able to work through that. We did an episode about Seventh Generation, the non-toxic cleaning products company. That was started by two partners, Alan Newman and Jeffrey Hollander, and within 3 years they had a falling out, a very bitter falling out. But they began as intense friends, fast friends, but they didn't do the hard work before they came to realize that they should be partners, which was to really interrogate what each person wanted out of this and why. And I think that was the mistake. But on balance, I believe having a partner gives you more, creates a higher probability that you will succeed.
Yeah. I love that you compared a business partnership to a romantic relationship or a marriage. I think that's such a great way of looking at it, because in the same way as we have a honeymoon period in our relationships where we get carried away with chemistry and not really forming a real connection or compatibility, we do the same in business. Like you said, when you become fast friends and you fall for each other and things seem to be going perfectly, and then all of a sudden you're met with that moment where you realize that you don't have the same values and you haven't communicated effectively. And I think what you said, doing that mature work of setting your values in the beginning, setting your systems and standards, I think we all want to trust people more. Like we all want to love and trust and have this open relationship, but actually doing that hard work up front seems to be the long-term sustainable option.
And by the way, it's really important to give yourself that time and to give yourself the opportunity to decide that maybe the partnership isn't right. I mean, I've been in the process of developing a partnership with a friend, well, somebody who's now really a friend, become a friend, but somebody I knew over the last year. And it's regular calls, it's weekly conversations, and also developing the idea. And that has been absolutely crucial, because you will be tested. There will be so many moments on that journey where you will be tested. And you're going to need to know that the person with you is a person of integrity, mm-hmm. and a person who is in this with you, in the trenches with you. And it's, as I say, there's an element of luck there too. But
Yes.
you can also control for that by really taking the time to interrogate that relationship and to understand that this is the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is so helpful, Guy. I'm enjoying this conversation so much so far. We've got so many more questions I want to ask you, but I did want to take a quick pause because I just want to let you know that your ability to share these stories of people you've interviewed with your ability to share your own experiences is just, it's magical. It honestly is. And I know that you've had a lot on this week and last week with your summits and the live event, but you're just so present right now, right here with these stories. And I want to thank you for that. And I applaud you for being able to share these stories in such a practical way that everyone who's listening and watching right now, I hope you're all taking notes, by the way, because I'm taking mental notes. And I honestly believe that you've given us the pathway to building a business in a book, which is actually really, really difficult to do. So one of the things that I think you shed a lot of light on, and I'm sure a lot of your guests have also spoken about, is that there seems to be a lot of mysticism around fundraising, right? There's a lot of mysticism about how much money you need to actually get started, and then when you need a certain amount of money. I remember being one of those people who would sit and dream with my friends in London, and we'd be like, oh, but you need like $1 million to do that, or you need like $5 million to do that. And then you always postpone it in your head. And it's always like, everyone's always like, when you see a app idea launch, you're like, oh, I had that idea like 7 years ago. Like, oh, they're just, there's a big difference between the idea of a company actually fundraising, how much you need. What are some of the myths around fundraising that you think we have in society today? And what did you actually learn from speaking to the people that actually did it effectively?
I mean, I think the biggest myth is that you need it, right? And by the way, sometimes you do. But I think there's an assumption that you have to go out and find money now, because that has been the path for several of these billion-dollar unicorns. The reality is, building a business is not about building a billion-dollar unicorn. Building a business is about building something that is sustainable and gives you fulfillment and might actually provide employment for other people. I mean, look at your own life. You didn't have any money to make videos, but you had a friend who shot weddings, and he said, I'll help you out. And he happened to be really good. And at 2 in the morning, 4, 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, he went around London and he got these great shots because nobody was out there, and he didn't get permits to do it because you were just in and out quickly filming. And you built that up slowly. And then you got to a point with such a huge audience, you amassed such a huge audience that you could then muster the resources and the capital to deploy for better, larger scale productions. And so you built it up like a pyramid. And that actually is a very simple way of thinking about any business, right? It starts here, and then you kind of progressively move up. Now, there are some businesses that are pretty much impossible to do that way. I don't think you could build Tesla without going to investors. But the reality is that, Elon Musk, when he started out building X.com, which was his payment company, he didn't have funding. He had to start on his own for several months, and then eventually had to find people who were willing to give him $1,000 here, $1,000 there. Now, here's the thing. Most people don't have access to Sand Hill Road venture capitalists. They can't just walk into Sequoia Capital and say, hey, here's my idea and I want $1 million. The vast majority of people don't have those networks. By the way, the vast majority of people don't just have a rich uncle or a rich parent who can write them a $10,000 check. So the idea that, capital is accessible to everyone is just not true. But I do believe that virtually all of us, if we need to amass some capital, do have access to some of it and ways to get it. So one of the things I talk about in the book is the concentric circles that we all inhabit. We are at the center of our own circle, right? We're sort of egomaniacal, selfish creatures. That's not really fair to say, but we all have our own. We're all living our own movie, right? That's our consciousness. It's our own movie. And we're at the center of our own world. But around us, there are these circles of close and loose ties. So imagine you want to start a business and you start to talk to your friends and you start to tell them the idea. And one friend might say, my boss actually might be interested in hearing this. Or another friend says, somebody I go to, I'm in a bowling league with, or whatever it might be. The way to kind of build those circles is by really, testing your idea out on people, talking with people, and trying to get feedback from people and asking people, do you know anybody? Is there anybody you think I should meet with? One of the best ways that founders that I've interviewed have raised money is by going to a meeting with somebody and not going with the intention of getting money from them, even though in many cases they would love that outcome, but saying to them, who should I talk to? Who should I go see? Can you give me 3 or 4 names? And you very quickly build this network of people that you have a connection to and a tie to. And that is really how many founders who don't have access to venture capital or, big money, is how they start to build the funding to create their businesses. And so it's very possible. It just requires a commitment and work and time and a willingness to put yourself out there.
I love that question though, because it puts yourself out there without having to put yourself out there. So when you ask someone the question of saying, hey, do you know anyone that I should speak to about raising funds for this or introducing for this kind of manufacturer or product designer, you give that person the opportunity to say, oh, I want to be involved, let me know. And if they don't, that's fine. They introduce you to their friends or their network. And so I feel like it's such a healthy way of being able to ask for help and put yourself out there without actually feeling that kind of awkwardness or weakness or feeling like you don't have it figured out. You have a great knack of asking good questions. You've developed the art of asking fantastic questions. What has been your favorite question to ask people that has given you the answer that was most fascinating? The reason I asked this is a few years ago, I used to say to people, I was like, if you see someone you admire, go up to them and don't ask them for a picture, ask them for a question. Ask them a question, because that picture will last a moment, but the question will give you a story to tell forever. And what question do you think people should ask people that they admire and people that they respect?
I think it's more about a tone rather than a question. And I'll give you 2 answers to this because I will give you a question.
I love that.
I think it's more about listening to somebody. I actually get much more information by just being an active listener to what somebody is saying. And there's a wonderful book actually. It came out about 30 years ago. It's called How to Talk to Your Kids So They'll Listen to You, something like that. I can't remember the name of the book. And it's basically designed, it's a parenting guide. And it basically says, when your kid comes to you and says, I'm so mad, at school today, Johnny was so mean to me, you shouldn't say, well, don't worry about Johnny, go find another friend. Like that's the instinct that a parent has. This book said, no, parents, you got it all wrong. When your kid comes to you and says, Johnny made me so mad today, I'm so angry, just listen and say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Don't give advice, just listen. And what you find is that your kid will give you more and more information. That principle applies to adults too. If you are talking to me and you are telling me your story, Jay, and I'm with you on that journey, and I am not just with you, but I'm expressing empathy. I'm like, I feel you. I'm really like, God, that must have been so hard. Sometimes that's my response to somebody. I don't say, and then what happened? I'll say, and it's not a strategic thing. I'm not like doing this in a calculated way. It's just, I'm just saying that must have been so hard. I can't imagine how hard that was. And the person says, and then they go on and they continue to tell you their story. So a big part of it is active listening. But if you have one shot, you find somebody you admire and you've got one question for them, I think you can always ask a person, what is something, if you could go back in time to the younger version of you, what would you tell yourself now? What would you say? You will almost always get an interesting answer from somebody.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. And I'm so glad you raised the point about tone and listening, because it's so refreshing to hear that as well, because you also get a different you can ask the same question with a different tone
Yeah.
and get a completely different answer, and you can almost feel it when it's a technique versus when it's a true seeking of a individual's like heart and mind, and like you can tell when they're obsessed with that question versus when they think it's a good question to ask. And I think that applies to the listener, to the receiver who's going to answer the question as well. Tell me about when you are putting this book together and you're obviously trying to compile, like, I mean, I don't know how many interviews you've done now. How many is it? Do you have a number? Do you know?
We've done, for How I Built This, total about 400 in-depth interviews with founders and
Incredible.
entrepreneurs.
Incredible. Okay, so 400 interviews. You're trying to compile it. What do you think has been the craziest, most outlandish story or pain that you came across in these 400 interviews that has like stayed with you so strongly that you just think this is, this is almost like a movie. Like, I can't believe this was someone's actual life.
I try and think of every episode in a cinematic way. I really do, because I'm trying to unfold that story and create a visual experience for people. I want people to go to just completely get lost in the story. I think of what I think of how, what I do is, and by the way, you're right. I mean, tone and listening is such an important part of it, because how you talk to somebody, how you ask questions, it's not what you ask, it's how you ask it, right? That's not how you elicit information. It's not the actual words you use to ask a question. Because if it was so simple, you could just give people a list of questions. Sometimes questions are very effective, but it's how you ask them. I think that for me, I'm always looking to help somebody tell their story in a way that you could imagine as a movie. You could imagine because our human stories are movies. Every single one of us is a movie. Many people think, oh, I'm not that interesting, or my life isn't that dramatic, and what they don't realize is that it is. My job is to show you that, is to know so much about you ahead of time that I can pull that out of you, because I know that. I can see that. That's the advantage we have as outsiders. We can see other people in ways they can't see themselves. And it gives all of us a superpower. I think, a story that sticks in my mind is a recent one we did about a company called the McBride Sisters Collection. It's the largest Black-owned wine business in the United States, and one of the largest in the world. And it was started by two sisters, Robin and Andrea McBride. They both share the same father. He was African American, and they both had different mothers. Neither of these women knew the other existed until they were in their 20s. Their father died, and they were informed by relatives that each sister was informed that they had a sister. Andrea was raised in New Zealand. Her mother was Kiwi. She had met Andrea's father in Los Angeles and then emigrated to New Zealand. Robin's mother was from Monterey, California, and also a white woman, raised her daughter in Monterey, California. And these two women did not know the existence of the other until they were in their 20s. And the story of their reunion is so emotional. It's so powerful. We were all crying when we were recording the interview, because it's almost impossible to believe that it's true, that it happened, that they, through just a random miracle, not only did they come together, not only did they love each other from the moment they saw each other, but they both grew up in wine-growing parts of the world, Monterey, California, and New Zealand, and they both had this incredible passion for wine. And they both decided that they were never going to be apart again. And Andrea moved to the United States to be with her sister. And they went on to create this business. They started it 15, 16 years ago. Very small, with no money, with no connections, in a world dominated mainly by white men. And they created this incredible business. You can find McBride Sisters wine in virtually every grocery store, every Walmart, around the United States today. And how they got there it's an epic. It's a hero's journey. It's as good as any movie you've ever seen. And it's all true.
That's incredible. I need to go back and listen to that. I've not heard that one. So definitely excited to dive back into it. And I hope everyone who's listening will go off and listen to that episode as well. It sounds absolutely phenomenal on how I built this. Guy, coming towards the end of our conversation here, I want to talk a bit about how this book and your work massively helps people who don't want to be entrepreneurs. Because I think that all the lessons you've shared today, all the lessons in the book are applicable to each and every person, whether they're an entrepreneur inside their organization or whether they work at their parents' business or whether they are just working a regular job and going out there and doing it. I think what you're sharing and the things that me and you care about are things that are applicable and useful to anyone and everyone in a skill set. And often the entrepreneurship journey has today been made very sexy and like attractive, and it's almost like everyone feels the pressure that they have to be an entrepreneur. I remember with one of my mentors who I absolutely love, and I had him, he was a mentor for me when I was at Accenture, and he would always tell me, he'd be like, Jay, you're an entrepreneur. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm like, I like working for people. I just want to make videos. I just want to make content. Like I'm more of a reporter, journalist kind of person. I don't want to. And he was like, no, you're an entrepreneur. And he'd keep saying it. And I'd go home and be like, this guy just doesn't understand me. And now I'm like, oh, you were right. But if someone's sitting here listening and they're like, oh, Guy and Jay, I don't really want to be an entrepreneur. I don't think I have it in me. It sounds too scary.
Yeah.
What can they take away from these conversations, your podcast, and this book? Because I think there's so much for them to take away. And I don't want people to miss out just because they don't want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So probably only about 15 or 20% of our audience are actually traditional entrepreneurs, people who have a brick and mortar store or an online store who've hung a shingle outside and are running a business. The vast majority of people who listen to How I Built This may not think of themselves as traditional entrepreneurs, but they are. The reality is that entrepreneurial thinking happens all of the time. It happens every single day of our lives. If you are a parent with kids, trying to think of creative ways to manage your household, if you are a single person thinking entrepreneurially about how to fill your time, one of the most innovative products in modern human history is the iPhone that was invented by Johnny Ive inside of Apple. Would you not say that was entrepreneurial? That whole product was developed by people within Apple who wanted to connect people through a handheld device. There was no diktat or mandate from above that said, let's do this now. It was part of a process that developed and created these amazing products. Entrepreneurialism is a mindset. It's not about hanging a shingle outside of your door. It's about thinking creatively. It's about thinking collaboratively. It's about trying to do different and new things and improve ways of working within your own team. It might be coming up with a whole new system for how you hold each other accountable. It might be a small nudge or twist or change in how you approach your own role, or how your team is organized. It's the same thing as leadership. Leadership can be a title, but having a title alone doesn't make you a leader. What makes you a leader is when you share your experience with others. We do this on our teams, especially on How I Built This. It's a small team of producers, but from the very beginning, and we really work to promote people from within. From our interns eventually become producers, and we have a system where we encourage the sort of the lowest level person from a title perspective. We encourage that person to take a leadership role. So we have an intern. The intern gets guidance from the previous intern who's now a producer and other producers who may have been interns 2 or 3 years earlier, but who are now leaders. We now have a former intern who is mentoring a current intern. That's a leadership position. That is a leader. once you start to behave as a mentor to other people, and you don't have to be much older than them, you might be a year or two ahead of them, you are a leader, you are an innovator, and you are an entrepreneur. That is what it's about. It's a way of thinking and operating. It's not about selling a product, inventing a product, and hanging a shingle. It's a mindset, and everybody has the potential to adopt that mindset.
I love that, Guy. Thank you so much for sharing that so clearly, both through this interview and in the book and in all of your podcast episodes. We end every episode of On Purpose with a final five, a fast five. So these answers have to be in one word or one sentence maximum. I break my own rules all the time, so be ready for me deviating. But Guy, if you're ready, we'll get going.
Okay.
All right. So question one is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
It's hard to give one answer, but it's a variation of dance like no one's watching, which means be open to all kinds of experiences. Don't limit yourself.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Great piece of advice. What's the worst piece of advice you've ever heard?
Stay in your lane.
Interesting. Okay. Question number three. What is your metric for success, your personal metric?
It's very simple. To create kind, responsible, warm, and loving humans. I'm a parent. I have one job to do. It's to pass on my values as best I can to my children and hope that they become good, kind, loving people who contribute to the world. It's that simple for me. It really is. That's it.
I love that.
That's my purpose.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Question number four. If you could have invested in a company or person aligned with your values at the beginning that you've now got to know or that you've interviewed now, who would it have been?
It would have been Sal Khan, even though he runs a nonprofit. He inspires me in infinite ways. I mean, what he has created with Khan Academy is life-changing. It educates 30 million people a month for free. And anybody listening or watching, if you do use it, please contribute to Khan Academy because it is a gift to the world.
That's beautiful. And the fifth and final question, Guy, is if you could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
You must visit another country.
I love that. It's a great answer. And we've never had it before. So it's also a unique and original answer. I love it. Everyone, Guy Raz, the author of How I Built This, The Unexpected Paths to Success from the World's Most Inspiring Entrepreneurs. Go and grab your copy. We've put the link in the description below as well. I hope that all of you read this. Use it. Don't just read it. Use this book. Use it if you're someone who's stuck, if you're trying to find a pivot, if you're struggling to figure out which is the right idea, if you're trying to find your co-founder, having issues with your co-founder. Literally, this book covers the whole gamut of the journey of an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. And I couldn't recommend it more. Guy, it's been so much fun spending so much time with you over the last couple of weeks. I honestly want us to turn this into a real friendship. I can't wait to hang out and spend time together and get to know each other's families as well. Is there anything that I haven't asked you to share that you'd love to share right now? I would love to hear it from you.
No, but I can't even begin to thank you for your generosity. And also I'm a little bit uncomfortable with how kind and generous you've been about what I do and the show. I have one really simple rule, which is I never want to do anything. I never want to appear anywhere. I never want to make content or a show if I feel like it wastes someone's time. I always want, if somebody is giving me their time, if someone's listening to this interview right now on your show, and they're giving me something extremely valuable, which is their time. And I never want to waste that time. I always want to be able to give somebody something that is valuable or useful. And so that's what I do. That's why I do what I do. That's what I aim to do. And you're just so generous and the things that you've said about the show and what I do, it means a lot. I mean, that's why I do it.
Absolutely, Guy. Thank you so much for coming on Purpose. And I meant every word I said. Everyone go and follow Guy on Instagram as well if you don't already, to find out more about how I built this and all the incredible work he's doing. He's also giving away thousands of dollars to help people start their businesses and companies too. So please go and check out for more details. Guy, thank you again for doing this. I'm so grateful for your time, and I hope we can connect soon.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thanks, Guy. If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.